I think that there is actually some overlap between the work of journalists and scholars. And I think that that overlap is particularly in regard, I want to talk about it in regards to the moral obligation of the journalist and the scholar. I think that scholars and journalists have a moral obligation to contextualize their research for the public. And they're speaking to multiple publics in different ways, but to contextualize the research. So when we're talking about ISIS, this means, for example, presenting multiple perspectives, not just multiple religious perspectives, which is very important, but also multiple scholarly perspectives. Because clearly, on an issue as contested as is ISIS Islamic, as Emma brought up in her comments, there are multiple opinions. People disagree with each other vehemently, and this disagreement is captured in the scholarly discourse as well as the religious discourse right now. So that is really important. It's also important, I think, for both the scholar and the journalist to highlight the moral quandaries that they encounter in the subject that they're studying. And so this means that I don't believe that there is any such thing as a disinterested or a dispassionate position that a scholar or a journalist can have. Each position every time we take a position, I mean, we have to let go of this Enlightenment idea along with the rationality, the idea of objectivity, that someone can exist in a vacuum without a social historical context and talk about an issue to capture the truth of that issue. There's no such positionality, so it's important to be aware and to be upfront about the subjectivity that we are coming to our subject matter from and the interest that we may or may not be serving in that position in relation to our subjectivity. That also, I mean, I would say further, that would also mean recognizing, of course, the limits of our expertise and knowledge and making sure we don't make sweeping, broad generalizations, that we restrict our comments to the subject matter that we're studying, that we have actually done the research to substantiate our claims about. And I think that the scholar also has a further responsibility. Journalists are supposed to speak to multiple audiences, and I think scholars also have a responsibility to speak to multiple audiences. Usually, I mean, when scholars don't speak to multiple audiences, they will use the idea of, their dispassionate, disinterested work as an excuse almost to not engage with multiple audiences. But I think when it comes to issues like the study of ISIS, for example, or the study of Islam in this highly politicized context, it is important for scholars to try to make that work accessible. And I'm excited to be on a panel with another Canadian, which doesn't happen all the time. And we may disagree about this, but it's 3 Canadians, nice. But in Canada, we are, as I said, our salaries are paid by taxpayers. And so there's a moral obligation upon us to speak to the public that is funding our research. And there's a lot of institutional push for that. And I really value that, actually. And so I bring that to my comments today.